People, this is why I brought you here, so we could talk about something that's very intense nowadays, and it's change. And I know change has been worked a lot by a lot of people nowadays, and I ain't got Hillary or even Kim Gordon to whisper in my ear. But I got Cris here from the Meat Puffs. I got Flea from Chili Peppers. I'm going to have Les on the phone here from Berkeley and the Primus.
We're going to talk about the bass, brother.
Yeah, and the bass, because this idea of empowerment, like Flea said, you know, being an outsider and then taking up a machine against these people, teaching the machine to breathe, and to make an identity for yourself, to make sense to yourself. If it takes Dallas, if it takes a song, whatever it takes. But to prove you're here, to let the other dudes know you're here. And I'm really curious about it because I ended up on bass because that's where you put the lame guy about 20 years ago. And I think it had a lot to do.
Wait, hold on 1 second.
All right.
Did both of you guys, did you think, like, when you started playing bass, that, like, you weren't, when it was one of your main things, because bass is always just the guy that goes boom, boom, boom in the background. Like, was your thing, like, I'm not going to be the lame guy, I'm going to be the bass player that steps up and goes, wahoo!
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I mean, I know I was thinking that.
I think my machine, the role I got picked, D-Boon's Mob, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a guitar with 4 strings. Then we found out they were bigger, and that we thought that's why they were for them. But we didn't really know it was lower and backup and whatever. But looking down the line, I'm half the person I am because of the machine I picked. Because it was this role I didn't really know about. I didn't know what the limitations or the potentials were. And so I really made it my own machine. And a lot of it had to do also with the music. I was playing the punk music. I mean, I learned on rock and roll, and I never could figure bass. The closest I could get to a rock and roll bass player was, oh, this guy's got chords he has to deal with. And every guy's got his way to skin the cat. And it was just like some kind of a burden. And you could never express yourself. You could just do it right, you know? Now, you, Cris, you're to me, you're the... as far as traditional, I mean, the younger brother who has to play bass. The perfect second fiddle, straight man to set up the big brother.
Fogerty was the younger brother.
Right. And in a way, we are like Fogerty's children. And the thing was, I think, I was talking about this earlier with Flea, I think rock and roll came from piano. I don't think it came from guitar.
Right.
This idea that rock and roll is guitar is kind of a bum rush. And it's why a lot of young guys who play guitars feel the burden of delivering the hugest cliches. Yeah. Because it was a natural. I think rock and roll was really invented on the piano with a left hand, a bass, and a right hand.
Rock.
We were always there. Our machine, that big string bass, they couldn't record it right.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. To me, I think it probably came, as much as it came from piano, it came from the horns and stuff.
All right.
I mean, well, first of all, like I was saying before, I mean, I think it comes straight from like the slaves picking cotton, which turned into blues, which turned into rock and roll.
Right.
And then you mentioned, the hillbillies with their guitars too.
Because they had to sell to the white kids.
But,
and all of that
the New Orleans guys were down there like kicking up that stuff and like all the strip joints and stuff in New Orleans, and they were kicking up those crazy grooves that were.
But there was always a left hand. There was always a bass clef.
Yeah.
We were not the kazoo of rock and roll, the kazoo of any kind of music. We were a real thing. The idea, the technology wasn't there, and even the roll. Yeah. I remember because we were at the Forum, and I was so far away, I couldn't tell what the bass was. We would listen to Smoke on the Water, and we could not hear that bass note driving in there because we were not schooled in that. We never learned in that. It was all guitar. But in a way, I think it worked to my benefit because not knowing what I was supposed to do, I was free to become my own man. And these kids who do watch all the hip current bands, I want them to know that because they can't walk into Guitar Center and see how to play bass on the video right there. They have to live it. They have to go through it. In fact, it's not so anti-guitar because or piano or drummer. The kick drum, your wife, you have to marry these people. You have to set them up. They have to set you up. That's the only way you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. Well, I know whenever I would watch rock bands play, it always seemed to me that the only thing that was holding anyone back in a rock band from going like completely bananas, out of their skull, insane maniac, like about to like kill their grandmother, is only because they were
themselves.
Like their inhibitions.
Man,
because it seemed to me, every time I see a rock band, I was like, well, God, it seems to me this whole thing is about you got to go completely berserk bonkers. I see these guys like sitting there, pursing their lips and shit, and thinking, oh, these guys are just acting like jerks.
All right.
And so that's why when after I discovered the bass, got into rock, then I was a while after that I found out what punk rock was. And that's when I found out what my calling was.
Right.
I was playing the bass and stuff, and I was like, you know, this whole thing with this beat that goes goom cat, goo goo cat, because I've been listening to this jazz, right?
Right.
Then I hear this beat, this doo, 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 and I was like, the whole feeling of it is this primal animal thing. So let's fucking go crazy,
Right.
You know. But no one was doing it but I didn't know about
because
punk
the rolls.
rock. I was on a late freight, and
Right.
then I found out about punk rock, where these guys people were actually doing that. Then I started hearing, like, coming from jazz. Then I started hearing, like, then I loved punk rock so much, I started hearing the exact similarity between, like, Black Flag playing Nervous Breakdown and Charlie Mingus doing Callin' the Hogs In or whatever,
Right.
some like hardcore Mingus song, and I could put them both together and they sound exactly the same to me,
Right.
because they were both the same thing. They're just coming from different worlds,
Right,
different
his machine was different.
different cultures,
His
and
machine, he
obviously
couldn't
one's-
get big.
Yeah.
Just think if Charlie Hayden had our big sound. Charlie Hayden or
Yeah.
Charlie Mingus.
I just think if we had like their sophisticated knowledge of music,
Yeah. Well,
Or their good looks.
yeah,
Right.
with a huge.
or all of it. All of it. Yeah, big schlong.
Hey, no, wait a second.
Bass is probably the best way to express the schlong.
I stumbled into bass really accidentally. You know, I got into music. I saw the movie Deliverance,
Right.
and there's a little part with the banjo.
Right, that kid on the
And
porch.
that just, you know, hit a chord in my head, and it was more a relationship, you know, an unraveling of, you know, thought in my brain and whatnot, and that music was an outlet to this, you know, thing. And the banjo, I got into that, and then Kurt, you know, my brother came back,
Right.
and he was playing some guitar, and I was like looking for something to play that I could hang out with him. I'd come out of my shell a little bit, and definitely all the personality.
And you wanted to hang with him.
But
That's kind of how I got into bass too with D
But it
Boon.
wasn't like, you know, the bass is the lesser thing. For me, it was that, you know, your banjo, you finger pick, right? So I had already kind of developed a little coordination right here, and I thought it'll just be easy to go over to a bass here. Nobody else is doing it. So for me, it was more. It wasn't a question of, you know, fighting the guitar. You've had that second banana shtick thing or trip that, you know, we've talked about before, and and I've always kind of taken.
Well, that's a weird
especially
tweak
with
skew
Jared,
on my side,
I mean,
you know?
especially with our band, where you have somebody that already that's not, you know, whose whole trip isn't the way you play it or the thing that you're playing, but the ideas that you put into it. I mean, Derek is not a, you know, sophisticated drummer on like a technical sense, but he is, you know, conceptually. And so for us, the bass just fit. It was just it was like a paintbrush. It was just another item, another object to use to get to the free flow of ideas.
Well, D Boon set me up. I mean, when you hear my old and records and you hear the bass come out, I'm being set up totally. The man has politically
rocking
put
on
his
that
chords.
shit, man.
Yeah, but I mean,
I didn't
a lot of
hear
it.
this.
If I had to play with Johnny Ramone doing power chords, you never would have heard me.
Yeah.
You don't know what an ensemble this is, and this is why the bass has changed music, I believe, because he's been more of a part of the making.